Aviators, welcome back to the Pilot Up North. In today's episode, we are going to talk about turns. Yeah, something that seems simple, but has its peculiarities with many forces acting at the same time. First of all, if you have just landed here or are not yet a subscriber, watch the video until the end, and if you like the content, give us your like and consider subscribing to the Pilot Up North. It costs nothing for you and makes all the difference for us. This way you support our channel to encourage many people like you, maybe the fulfillment of a dream to fly. So we are gonna talk about turns. In private pilot training, we have three basic types of turns: shallow, medium, and steep turns. Shallow turns are turns between 0 and 30 degrees of bank angle, with 15 degrees being the most common here in Canada. Medium turns are turns between 30 and 45 degrees of bank angle, with 30 degrees being the same most common here in Canada. Steep turns are turns between 45 and 60 degrees of bank angle, being 45 the usual one. To see and to control the bank angle of our aircraft, we'll see the attitude indicator, which has marks of 10, 20, 30, 60, and 90 degrees, and in some cases, we also have the markings for 45 degrees. But before we start making turns, we need to understand the forces that act in a turn. G-force. During a turn, the G-force increases because the aircraft is being subjected to two forces, centrifugal and G-forces. The centrifugal force is the one where the force is acting to push the aircraft out of the turn, and the force of gravity pulling the aircraft down. Centrifugal force is generated by the natural tendency of objects in curvilinear motion to follow a straight line. In other words, centrifugal forces is the force that throws the passenger or pilot to the side of the turn. This happens when you are in a car and it makes a turn, for example, to the left, and you were thrown to the right because your body tends to remain going in the same direction it was traveling before. When an aircraft makes a turn, centrifugal force acts on the aircraft and its occupants in the same way as in a car, pushing them to the side of the turn. At the same time, gravity continues to pull the aircraft and its occupants down. As a result, the G-force increases, and the sensation is as if the weight of the person increased. The amount of G-force experienced by the occupants of the aircraft during a turn depends on the rate of change of direction, the radius of the turn, the speed of the aircraft, and the bank angle. As the radius of the turn decreases or the speed of the aircraft increases, centrifugal forces increases, and consequently G-force also increases. Okay, the other force we have is load factor. Load factor, in simple terms, is the measure of the load that an aircraft is supporting during a flight relative to its maximum allowed weight. It is usually expressed as a percentage and can be calculated by dividing the total weight of the cargo on board by the aircraft maximum takeoff weight. It is not the subject of today's episode, but I need to briefly talk about stall. The load factor affects the stall speed of an aircraft because to support the additional weight of the cargo, the aircraft needs to generate more lift, increasing its flight speed. As the load is increased, the speed required to keep the aircraft in the air also increases. This means that the stall speed, which is the minimal speed required to keep the aircraft in the air, also increases. So, if an aircraft has a maximal takeoff weight of 100,000 kilos and it's carrying a load of 80,000 kilos, the load factor would be around 80%. If the stall speed of the aircraft at 80% capacity is 200 kilometers per hour, the same aircraft at 100% capacity may need a higher stall speed, perhaps 220 kilometers per hour, to maintain the flight level. I say perhaps because this depends on a series of conditions such as wing design, whether it is a low or high wings profile, aircraft weight, and so on. The load factor is fully connected to the turns, and that is why I am also touching in this subject. The load factor in a turn is directly proportional to the bank angle. The load factor is defined as the g-force applied on an object relative to gravity. Therefore, it has everything interconnected to the force mentioned previously. For each bank angle we use to bank, the load factor can be calculated using the following formula. Load factor is equal 1 divided by cosine of the bank angle. I know it sounds complicated, but it's not. For example, in a 15 degrees bank, the calculation is as follows. 1 divided by the cosine of 15. The cosine of 15 is 0.965. So 1 divided by 0.965 is equal to 1.035. This means that there is a force of 1.03 Gs taking place on the aircraft and its occupants, which is almost nothing compared to 1 G force experienced during a straight and level flight. Here are the load factor calculations for bank angles of 15, 30, 45, 60, and 75 degrees. 15 degrees bank, we have 1.03, 30 degrees bank, load factor 1.15, 45 degrees bank, load factor is 1.41, and look this, 60 degrees bank, load factor is 2.0 Gs. It means double of your weight. If you are 80 kilos, in a turn of 60 degrees, you will experience a weight of 160 kilos. To wrap up the theoretical part, let's take a look at the Cessna 152 P08 in section 2, limitations, specifically on page 2-7. Here, the certified limitations of our aircraft in terms of G-forces for any maneuvering are: load factor for flaps up operation 4.4 positive Gs and 1.76 negative Gs. We are not talking about negative Gs for now. Load factor for operations with flaps down, positive Gs are limited to 3.5 and negative Gs are not mentioned here. If we look at the load factor for each bank angle we previously discussed, we can see that the bank angle of up to 75 degrees still falls within the safety envelope tested and certified for the Cessna 152, but the force will already be at 4 Gs. But why does a simple turn increases the G-force of an aircraft so much? In fact, the turn itself does not increase the G-force to these levels. The fact is that when making a turn, the balance between weight and lift is disrupted. During a turn, the vertical coefficient of lift changes position, causing lift to be displaced relative to weight. In a 45 degrees turn to the left, for example, the vertical component of lift remains vertical relative to the horizontal component of lift, while the actual lift generated by the aircraft's wings is at a 45 degrees angle to the left. As we saw earlier, to maintain a level flight, both weight and lift must have the same proportion. We talked about how weight increases during a turn due to the load factor, G-forces, and centrifugal force, right? So, with all of this, as lift is displaced, weight is greater than lift, and therefore the force of gravity wins this contest, and as a result, the nose of the aircraft tends to descend due to the weight. To correct this tendency of the nose down during turns due to increase in weight, as we see in this illustration of the vertical component of lift, we must increase the lift of the aircraft by increasing the angle of inclination of the wings. Hold on, Gilberto, it's getting too complicated to me. If it's turning into a complicated situation for you and you were not understanding what we are talking about, I recommend you to go back and watch the video again. And I can guarantee you, if you do this, you will certainly understand what I am talking about. So, following up, how to increase the lift of the aircraft with the angle of inclination of the wings. Very simple, just increase the angle of attack by pulling the control stick or yoke, depending on your aircraft, towards you as if it was commanding a climb. But Gilberto, why didn't you say so from the beginning? Why go around to say that all you need to do is pulling the control stick commanding a climb? I don't know about you, but I can't stand the idea of doing something just because someone said so. I have the philosophy of my life, a philosophy in my life of understanding everything I am doing. Understanding the reason why I am acting in a certain way brings me to a safe side and confidence in emergency situations. Safety is everything in aviation, guys. So finally we are finished here on this part of the theoretical part of this video. As you understood about the main forces acting on our body and acting on the aircraft itself, let's go for a flight to see all of this in real life. In this case here on the simulator. So I am passing here just to let you know this video is being finished right now, and a new video with all the turns in the simulator will be sent out on next Sunday, and then you can keep watching and paying attention. This video will be available for you at 12 p.m. on Sunday, next Sunday. I don't know what day on March it will be, but yeah, next Sunday. And then in this video, I'll cover about the shallow turn, medium turn, and steep turn in flight now in the simulator. I hope you enjoyed this video, and then I'll see you on Sunday. Bye bye.